we are now talking Ohio State Buckeyes.
Here we
the
go.
Buckeyes finish number 1 in the real rankings, number 5 in the recruiting rankings. And some of these recruiting fans care more about the recruiting rankings than they do the overall rankings. But look at this is a really, really good class. At times, they were number 1. I think there was a couple misses. David Sanders Jr., you'd like to have the number 1 offensive tackle in America, but hey, you got Carter Lowe. They went into Texas. They land Riley Pettijohn. And their quarterback, Tavian St. Clair, committed to them since 2023. So this was a huge class. Yeah, there were some disappointments, but overall, I mean, loaded, especially at key positions. Steve, what do you like about this Ohio State Buckeye recruiting class?
Well, they're the number 1 defense in the country this past season, and they land guys that fit that standard. Devin Sanchez was their top corner in the country. You're talking about guys like Naeem Offord and DJ Pickett. All 3 visited Ohio State at various points in the process. Naeem Offord also at one point committed to Ohio State. But Devin Sanchez was their guy. That's who they poured into. He's a Buckeye. He's got a chance to add to that recent DBU tradition that they've had at Ohio State. And then Riley Pettijohn, maybe the most athletic linebacker in the country, to choose Ohio State over Texas, Texas A&M, and USC. That was one of the Buckeyes' biggest recruiting wins on the trail going into the Lone Star State, landing Sanchez, landing Pettijohn. So love what they did there. And then running back was a huge need for them, Josh. They lose Travion Henderson. They lose Quinshon Judkins. They go out and sign 3 guys. Bo Jackson, the coveted in-state guy who Alabama and Georgia hosted for visits. Then you flip Anthony Rogers from Alabama. He's kind of a gadget, versatile guy that can hurt you in a lot of ways. And then Isaiah West, who at one point was committed to Kentucky, he is as physically ready to go at the running back position as anyone in the country, hurt as a senior. But I'm talking about just 215 pounds, a guy that looks the part, 3 running backs to help soften the blow of losing Henderson and Judkins, the best running back room in the country.
Chad, when we talk recruiting, a lot of the time, there might be fans tuned in right now that say, well, Ohio State finished number 1. How come recruits didn't hop on board? But in recruiting, we know there's a bit of a lag. So what's the sense you get already from 2026 recruits when they talk about the Buckeyes?
I mean, honestly, Josh, it's the same, maybe a slight, more excitement there because they come off a championship. But look, Ohio State recruits at a high level every year. Now they just got over the top and won that national championship this season. And that's obviously going to help it and boost a little bit maybe in 2026 and 2027 and moving forward. But look, Ohio State has high expectations every year. I mean, they were on the cusp of beating Georgia a couple of years ago and then facing TCU for a national championship. Georgia and Ohio State were the best 2 teams playing in that time, and it was a crazy game, missed field goal. Ohio State was right there then. So I think it doesn't change a lot. They're an elite program. They're viewed that way by the elite recruits every cycle. They're going to recruit at an elite level every cycle and be in that top 3, top 5, if not number 1, each and every year. So yes, the national championship, definitely only helps their chances to sign a bigger and better class this year, but it'll be no different. It'll be elite. We're talking about them again in December. And then again next February, we'll be saying the same things. A top class, loaded players, coast to coast, 5 stars here, number 1 players there. Ohio State is the Ohio State.
Yeah, they are, no doubt about it. But there's been a lot of coaching change.
Yeah,
so
turnover.
When is it about the X's and O's, or is it more about the Jimmies and Joes?
I think it's got to be I don't want to sit on the fence here, but I think it's probably a mesh of both. I think at a place like Ohio State, you're always going to be within the threshold of what you need to win a national championship, whether it's at the quarterback position, from a talent perspective, right. Yes. And so, did Chip Kelly definitely earn his money a year ago by how he called that offense? Absolutely. I mean, there's some huge spots. But I think the other piece we talk about with recruiting from the high school level, at Ohio State, you probably also can swing a pretty big bat when it comes to recruiting your next OC in DC. So I'm not too worried about Ohio State from an X's and O's perspective. I do want to say this, though, Josh, about Ohio State. Can we finally acknowledge that Ryan Day wasn't born on third base? If he was born on third base, he'd be out by now. Urban Meyer coached his last game in 2018, and they just consistently live in the top 5 when it comes to acquiring talent. So Ryan Day, good coach, good recruiter, and nothing new here.
You know, it doesn't happen overnight. I don't mean to bring this up, but bring up Jim Harbaugh. He did it in what, year 7? You know, it took him year 8. He did it.
Yeah.
So for Ryan Day to do it in year 5 or 6, you know, hey, it's tough. It ain't easy. Steve, a phenomenal class. They were able to hold on to a lot of these commitments. I know we made a lot about Naeem Offord at the end, but I mean, there were guys on this commit list that other teams were coming after, and they were coming after hard, including some of these names here, but also Tarvis Alford. You know, he's from the South Florida area. Miami was involved with him. But how is Ohio State, you know, minus Naeem Offord, able to hold on to so many of their top commitments down the stretch?
Well, I think their infrastructure and the relationships that they have with recruits allows them to battle till the end and hang on to guys. Look, everybody has their challenges to hang on to all their commits. Everybody has their flips. But Ohio State, from a relationship standpoint, they do a great job. From an NIL standpoint, infrastructure, resources, these kids see an opportunity to really capitalize on NIL at Ohio State. I think that was a real relevant thing down the stretch for Quincy Porter this cycle, the number 2 receiver in the country. He's taking visits at the end of the cycle, Penn State, talking to Florida. I think a lot of that was NIL motivated, just to see how far it could go for him this cycle. And then Ohio State, they're able to flex in that realm and balance it. I think their infrastructure allows them to be successful, have those direct conversations with these kids, give them the answers necessary in a way that they trust and they lock in there. So communication, the way they talk and relate to their recruits and are able to show them on the roster, this is how our current players are taken care of. It resonates with the recruits, and they were able to keep these guys. Look, Tarvos TJ Alford was texting Chad while we were at the table that he was thinking about flipping to Miami. So that thing, you know, went down to the absolute end there, and the Hurricanes were fighting all the way to the finish. They hang on to Tarvos TJ Alford.
All right, Ohio State fans, you talk to us in the comment section. Who do you think is going to be the next impact freshman for the Buckeyes? I mean, Jeremiah Smith kind of laid the blueprint for how it's done. Now the expectations of these freshmen are high. Let us know who you like. Comment section below.